All right. Well, thank you all for coming to meet with me. My name is Joel Henry. This is Lee Harrison. And we're part of Bittner Henry Insurance Group and American Church Group. And our focus is we serve those who serve others. And so we insure probably about 6,000 ministries and churches, camp schools. We represent a company called Brotherhood Mutual, which is a specialty church company. And we're a fourth-generation family business, and so we started with churches, but now we're really moving on to a lot of nonprofits, and addiction treatment centers, home health care, and so we've partnered with a lot of other companies as an independent broker that specialize in those sorts of niches. So it's kind of unique, but it helps us, rescue missions are a little unique as well, and so the risks that you do, and something I've been learning is that every rescue mission is so different. So what I'm hoping to get out of this is, and something I've been seeing with a lot of nonprofits and high level addiction treatment centers, is you see there's a lot of workers' comp claims and slip and falls, and so that's really the central focus of what I'm trying to get to today. And so we'll kind of just go through it with a risk management perspective, because the insurance market's a little crazy right now. Just to be frank with you, it's from a property standpoint, it's really tough because all the storms and costs of everything's going up. And then also, society's getting a little more litigious. There's things called nuclear verdicts and thermonuclear verdicts where the lawsuits are getting into tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars. So it's getting really expensive. So for that reason, we almost have to be more buttoned up. And so it's, in some aspects, we think about fundraising. That's the one way to make money in this aspect. But also, risk management, it's a little bit tougher to see the dollars on it, but if you do the right steps and you say get non-renewed or your claims go up, obviously that's money that's going to be taken out of the ministry. And that's not what we want. We want to be as cautious and careful as possible. So this doesn't have as much a focus on property. We're talking more about slip and fall. So when we're looking at, you can see the handout, one of the key aspects of thinking about risk management, one of the basic principles, is just risk identification. And there's really 5 principles on it. When it comes to identify your risk, analyze it, you want to control it, see the finance. Hey, well, can you get her? And then you want to talk about the finances in it, and then how do we keep the administrative tasks going forward to minimize it from happening again. So one thing I've been learning is every rescue mission is so different. And also, every rescue mission that is in each area has different challenges as well. So if you're more of in a city, maybe like I did one in D.C., and they were gifted a community center building where they were handing out food and clothes, but the traffic was just so difficult to get in and out. So their challenge is, they're obviously inheriting a building, which is great, but then how do we make it as safe as possible? So this would be the first thing. These are just a list of some of the few different operations that a rescue mission might do. I don't know if there's anything I might be missing, but every rescue mission is so different in what they do. So that would be the first one, is identify your top risks. What is the top risk that we face? I was at one rescue mission. They have a kitchen ministry where they make a lot of muffins and things like that they sell to the community. So, and they also had a camp. So it's a little bit different than some other ministries. So then we talk about different risks. Now, obviously, she's not wearing a hard hat, so she's not doing a very good job to start. But when you talk about the different positions, the risks are going to be a little different. From a warehouse worker to a clerical worker, it's going to be a little bit different, obviously. And so in the back, I have some examples of types of claims that you could experience from, say, an office exposure or from a warehouse exposure and things of that nature. Those are just examples for it. Did you have any questions or anything?
No, I'm good.
No, you're good? Okay. All right. So when we're still identifying our risk and analyzing risk, you got to say, where are all our workers? Where are our potential claims happening? What potential risk are we facing? And just being really transparent about it. Because the more transparent you are about it, the more you can tackle it and head on. So those are just all things to think about. Obviously, front desk security, that's going to be different if you're in a metropolitan city. Obviously, in a little more rural area, it might not be as strict, but it really just depends. So these are a couple examples. I'm probably missing something, so if I'm missing something, feel free to shout out and say, hey, this is something we do, because that's just going to help me and everyone else. Yeah, go ahead.
Another thing too, from the nerdy aspect of it, is when you're looking at these different classification codes for these different jobs, it changes the premium as well too. So based off the payroll reports, it also changes your premium amount. So.
Yeah. There's a thing called, on their workers' compensation, there's a thing called experience mod. And that's dictated by the state. So they look at how many claims you have, and then the more claims you have, the more expensive your premium is going to get. And when you get to, like, say, a 1.314 workers' comp rate, then you're going to be talking about you're possibly getting non-renewed, and you have to go to state, and then when you have to go to state, then your premium is going to probably double or triple, and then you don't get flexible payment plans. So a lot of bad things happen. So it's always good to just be head on, and we'll kind of get into the analyzing and going on from there. So I broke it down into 3 sections on this handout. There's really 3 parts. Hey, good morning. Good morning. Good morning. So there's really 3 parts about when we're thinking about accident prevention. We're really talking about the pre-accident portion, the during operations, and then the post-accident. And you should have a plan for all 3 of these. So when we talk about the first thing first, it starts with leadership, and starts by building a culture of safety. And I was just quoting on this guy. He's a great guy. He's a great church leader. And, some of the requirements to get started as an addiction treatment center is a little bit tough. You have to have a business plan, abuse prevention plans. And he's looking at this, and he's turning, he's like, I don't want to do this stuff because no one's going to look at it. And it's like, I understand where you're coming from, but it really starts from you. If you don't care about it, no one else is going to care about it. And so there's a few claims that are above anything else that are huge reputation hits. Of course, abuse prevention is a huge priority. But I remember I went on a site with my one friend, and it was more of blue collar, but they weren't wearing hard hats. And he's like, well, if the supervisors are wearing a hard hat, no one else is. So it kind of starts with the attitude up top, and it might seem a little, even in our offices at home, we have abuse prevention trainings and things like that, even for insurance agents. So it's things that we kind of set the tone and say, hey, we're not different from anybody else. So start from leadership, auditing processes and policies. Just seeing when you're looking at, hey, where's the heaviest flow of traffic that we have? Where is our biggest risks that we have? This is going back to identification and analyzing, controlling phase. What can we do in these situations? How can we work these high-risk situations and try to minimize these from happening as much as possible? And we'll get into more specifics about it, but not cutting corners, reject complacency, really trying to set the tone from the top. There's so many resources that companies offer for free. There's so many. And there's so many people that don't utilize them at all. And things, I know there's things like water sensors that some companies offer. They also offer GPS units on vehicles and things like that. They're free. You can, we've had times when addiction treatment centers, they'll have a GPS unit, and someone will go off to the store for a couple hours, and you don't know where they go. And so it's something where you can utilize some of these company resources for free and really minimize some of the risks that's out there. And there's tons of resources about, sometimes you don't have to reinvent the wheel, You really should update your policies and procedures, your bylaws and your abuse prevention policies and procedures, but that's a lot of work. And these companies come out with new resources on a regular basis to make your life a little bit easier. So your agent should be pointing you in those directions, and then we've kind of talked about analyzing and identifying and controlling. So.
How can we find out about the resources?
Great question. So it really, obviously you can reach out to us. We'd always love to share some resources because we put together some on our agency as well as with the company. But it should be a conversation that your agent should be able to have, and they should be able to network with what the companies, or you could probably reach out to your company for examples as well. One offering that they will probably take you up on if you ever want and say, it's usually not the most favorable thing that people want, but it's called loss control. Well, you'll have someone from the company and do a tour, and then they'll probably make recommendations like, hey, you got to build a handrail here. Hey, if you have this, maybe you have to fix a crack in the sidewalk and things like that. Sometimes they're a little more, I've had times when safety control comes in and says, hey, you have Federal Pacific electric box and you got to replace it. And Federal Pacific was this old electric company that went insolvent because they had faulty equipment, so people have to replace the whole electric. But it's either replace that or you're really facing exposure to your building burned down. So that's another option as well, is loss control. It's not always the most favorable, but being transparent with your insurance company is always the best thing to do, because then they can see what's going on, they see your operations, see that you're making an effort to be safe. So great question. Anyone else have any questions so far?
And I would say loss control people are not apt to review. A lot of times I think people think it's
Yeah.
oh man, they're coming to ding us and, write us up for all these things. They're actually there to say like, hey, this is something that could hurt you and could cause your whole industry to basically go under because of claiming you. So,
Yeah, totally. And so,
I got one for you.
yeah, please.
I've learned this in the past for 22 years. I've never seen an insurance company that's my friend.
Fair?
I see where each time it's like, there's a lot of times where I think we ought to fight a case on workers' comp,
Okay.
and we don't. And I guess I hate to say it this way, if I have a higher experience mod, the insurance company is going to make more money. I've been in the assigned risk now for 20 years because we have a temporary agency, and anytime you have a temporary agency with multiple jobs, like I said, I got some of them that's like 3.5 times the rate because of at one time we had a real high experience mod.
Right.
How come the insurance company don't fight workers' comp cases more often?
That's a great question. So, unfortunately, we're in a day and age where a lot of people that are filing lawsuits or getting attorney representation, they're winning a lot of times. And some of that depends on the area that you're at, and some of that depends sort of on the type of claim that you're not talking about unemployment like claim where you fire someone. You're talking about workers' comp losses and things like that.
I'll give you an example. We had a girl working in one of our stores. She drops the hanger, a plastic hanger.
Right.
Steps on it, falls, costs us $28,000.
Yeah.
I mean, she created the issue.
Right.
But here again, we pay people to be stupid. I mean,
Yeah.
I hate to say it that way, but why do insurance companies not fight this more often?
That's a great question. I mean, the workers' comp is going to cover your full medical expenses, however much the medical expenses are, up to 2/3 of their wages. So that's pretty standard with workers' compensation across the board. So maybe their medical bills are more expensive. Maybe that's part of a reason. So it's tougher, when it comes to, obviously, if they're getting an attorney, that changes things. If they're not getting attorney representation, usually you're seeing straightforward, their medical expenses being covered and then 2/3 of their wages. When they're getting attorney representation, they're claiming that there's something more. And so, again, we're just getting to more litigious society. And some of it, I blame the insurance company on that one. It's tough for me to blame them on.
There's a lot of variables in that, sounds like. So.
Yeah. It's a tough situation to be in.
Well, the money itself didn't have anything to do with the medical expenses. That was automatically paid. This is what they got above in the end.
Really?
Oh yeah, I mean that's what we wrote a check for.
Interesting.
So this is after the lawsuit.
Well, we were at James Scott Fair. I mean, that's where we were sitting in the office, and that was what the insurance company came up with. I mean, I just see so many times, if my premium is going to go up because of this, and I am paying my premium to an insurance company.
Yeah.
What, like I said, why do we not fight it? I mean, it's almost like the more claims I have, the more money y'all make. So to me, maybe I'm wrong, but that's just the way I've seen it for the last 20 years.
And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, so that you've seen more of that side of it than I have, but I think a lot of times the insurance companies say, hey, if we can just settle this and pay this amount, it'll be cheaper than having to go through the whole court process.
Right, that's fair.
It adds up. I mean,
Yeah.
all your fees are what, $400 an hour, $500
Right.
an hour?
Yeah.
So they're probably looking at that and calculating it, or somebody's calculating, not me, but somebody out there is calculating and figuring out what's cheaper. So.
Yeah. It's tough to say for each specific example, but probably lean towards what Lee was saying. But great points to bring up. Excellent points. So this kind of dives in. We'll get to some more specifics about being safer on certain situations, how to handle certain situations when they do arise. This is talking about the benefits of better culture, less claims, better morale, better leverage with underwriting, those sorts of things, and just being more prepared overall. So what we're seeing is a lot of claims happen at the beginning of when someone is hired. So onboarding has to be buttoned up and refined. It's probably the most vulnerable time because you think about it, people are less comfortable, they're less knowledgeable of the area, they don't know where everything is, they don't know where all the tools are, and they don't know how everything works. And so maybe they turn a corner, not used to maybe something being there, or they're not looking, they're backing up and they fall over or something like that. So what I really recommend, and one of our coworkers, he was a manager at Walmart for many years, and so he would always have an onboarding policy and procedure where basically says an onboarding checklist that he reviews maybe on a weekly basis, bi-weekly basis, and has a list of safety policies and procedures that you need to abide by, and if you don't, then maybe you'll be written up, or at least having that signature is going to acknowledge that they have to take over some sort of responsibility when they're at the job. So whatever that might be, and this is when you're going back to the risk identification, you have to identify what their job is going to be and analyze it, and then obviously tailor that onboarding process to whatever they're doing. Obviously, we were talking to a gentleman from Durham, he was doing a call center. That's going to be a way different exposure versus someone who's giving tours of the facilities and things like that. So all different stuff to kind of put in place. But having policies and procedures, employee handbooks, job descriptions, all that stuff is super important. Setting expectations about what we expect you to do, how you expect you to do it. So, and go ahead.
I'm going to piggyback off this. If you have something like this in place and have this documented and this stuff written up and we can give it to an underwriter, it really does look favorable among you guys. And sometimes they'll cut us a deal. I had said deals like they look favorably upon that when they're actually rating the risk of what you guys have. So.
Yeah, having job descriptions also doesn't completely absolve us. Unfortunately, this is the litigious society part. But we've had times when people have been written up for not doing their job duties, and for several times, and then they can still file a lawsuit with the EEOC. And so now, overall, when we're thinking at liability means at fault, right? So however much, whatever policies and procedures you're doing to reduce your liability is going to reduce your how at fault you are at the time of a loss. And so that's really what we're thinking about.
Question.
Sure.
Glad you're here. Volunteers, is it state by state that volunteers could make claims to a workers' comp policy?
Great question.
I don't think it's true in New Jersey. I've been audited 3 times. We're also in the state plan for 2 years because our experience rating is over 1, and it's been that since I came into the position. We're working very hard to get off that state plan.
Great.
I don't believe our volunteers are. Is that state by state? Is this something I should ask my broker? Great
question. So anyone who's financially compensated is considered an employee. So sometimes people look and be like, well, my XYZ person's a 1099 worker. Yeah. They're not an employee. 1099, you can be deemed financially compensated 1099 for anything over $25.
Yeah, all over. Yeah,
but if you're
I know are covered.
But if you're strictly a volunteer, then you'd be under just the general liability med pay.
That worried me.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay. Yep. And so there's also some companies do it differently. There's a coverage called volunteer accident medical. Yeah, volunteer accident. Yeah, it's not workers' comp, but that would be separate. Volunteer accident medical would be. So there's liability. So if you have a volunteer pick up a box, throw out their back, then medical payments is going to pay for those initial medical expenses to kind of get them going, and they won't have to file a lawsuit to get any sort of coverage. Yeah. So that's kind of where volunteer accident medical kind of comes in. Otherwise, they have to file a lawsuit, and it's like you're volunteer. Like, shoot, I really want to take care of you, but you're a volunteer, and you're not technically under the workers' comp.
Yeah, we feel covered if we have the volunteer insurance, but we also make every volunteer sign a waiver.
Great question.
Risk. And if insurance up is on them, does that protect us as well that they sign that?
That's a great policy and procedure to do. And so I think waivers are a very psychological thing to do. And people are like, I signed a waiver. I don't want anything to go against the rescue mission. And that's a great thing to do. If it's something serious and they have dismemberment or they pass away, The waiver is not going to go extremely far. It may go somewhat, but ultimately, it's still a piece of paper, But it will help for the smaller claims. So obviously there's an inconvenience level. Is this worth it? Is this an inconvenience? We don't have to get waivers for every single little thing. But what can we do? That doesn't, cause too much of a problem on overhead on us. Talking about safety orientation, just checklist of safety expectations. I really think that's important. The first 90 days, so important to just really drill down, having supervision, having people take care of that, and being really hands-on. If you have special training, things like that, it really just depends what job. And then having accident reporting and things of that nature.
Yeah, documentation is key.
Documentation is key. So then obviously we're sort of in the still pre-accident, having an emergency evacuation plan, an inclement weather plan. If there's, having floor mats if it's raining outside, having, if they're in the kitchen, having non-slip shoes. These are all things, clear paths, and just trying to, you'd be surprised how many people trip over a box and fall over and causes, pretty significant damage. And so just being as cautious as you can with as much as you can. Obviously being in the kitchen, I think that's I worked in TGI Fridays for many years, and so we wore non-slip shoes, and they're not as fashionable, but they go a long way, and they actually do help. But otherwise, it gets real greasy on those floors. And then just having first aid equipment, things like that. Heavy equipment, I don't know who has a forklift. Eh? Yeah. So this is obviously I was touring this one rescue mission. And it was during the busiest time, and someone using the forklift at the time. And it was kind of like, should have been trying to do that before as the rush kind of came, where where everyone's picking up clothes and food. So, but having a 10-foot rule, having people on both sides, wearing hard hats, just making sure you go over trainings multiple times, being very cautious with it. The Walmart coworker that we had, he would say that if someone would walk down the aisle while a forklift was in operation, they would have to turn off the forklift until that person left the aisle. So just being really cautious with those as much as possible. He said in the warehouse, one of the top 5 claims they saw was wire hangers and things of that nature. So hangers and things that could just roll out and someone's not expecting it to be there. So. Obviously, just being really cautious with it as much as possible. This is an idea. It may not be as favorable. It may look a little goofy, but I think it's a great idea. Just because, having daily warm-ups and exercises, doing aerobic exercises, stretching. I saw in one video and someone's making fun of all these construction workers doing exercise. And I said, you know what? They're trying to take care of themselves. And there's a lot of people that don't stretch at all and don't take care of themselves. And especially if you're talking about some lifting, I've seen people throw out their back lifting a 6-pack of soda. And it doesn't take much. It doesn't take much. And if you're not warming up, you're not taking care of yourself, you're not doing these sorts of things, then you're prone to having an accident. And so if you're lifting something bulky and over 30 pounds, just find a buddy. And those sorts of things make a big difference. And so these would be all practices I would expect on the onboarding and really emphasizing, because they're just really important. So.
And just to reiterate this, my wife is a physical therapist in Greenwood, North Carolina, and she, even when I'm working on stuff out in the yard or whatever, she's like, you're lifting that wrong, you're going to hurt yourself. So it really does. It makes a big difference. She's very particular about it. So it can hurt you.
Preparation is key, and just trying to map out traffic as much as possible. I mean, it's something that if you have a map of your warehouse or community center or thrift stores, and you kind of see where's the flow of traffic coming in and out. How do we navigate the people coming out? How do we pre-stage the bags and carts if we're distributing food and clothes as much as possible? And, when I went to the one rescue mission, and it was really tough because it was just one way in, one way out, and nobody was wearing any vests, and so it was hard to tell who was the workers and who was coming in for food. So it was, to some degree, vests and hard hats, and those things are going to signify points of authority. So people can, if something does happen, there's an escalation, it's easy to say, hey, I have a neon vest, I'm part of this, and this is how we handle these sorts of situations. And then who knows what a nurse triage is? A nurse triage hotline, because I didn't know it either. And so basically, apparently there's a lot of workers' comp carriers that say if you have any sort of claim for a workers' comp, you can call the nurse triage hotline, and it's basically you get a 24-hour service for a nurse, and they can say, you can tell them the situation. And this is what the Walmart guy was telling us. He's like, they couldn't, anytime they had a slip and fall, they had to call the nurse triage hotline before they did anything else. And what that did was say, okay, this is the situation, what do we do next? And kind of gives you an independent party from saying, okay, maybe we just need to get some Advil or whatever. Maybe you need to go to the hospital every single time. It gives them a different, perspective of what to do next.
Which Durham, if I remember correctly, one of y'all guys told us that y'all just got somebody from Duke to come and help y'all.
Oh, yeah.
Matter of fact, we've got, we hired her when COVID came in as far as helping us with COVID, but she is now, they're in the process. They got a big grant for us. They can test everyone at our facility for SARS, COVID, the flu. We've got it both facilities.
That's cool.
She is now, I'm getting ready to sign a grant for her, and she is, it's gonna be hopefully a 2-year grant. They're trying to get it approved for 2 years, where she can come in and basically do a study. And what she's gonna do is accumulate how many times does someone go to the emergency department, how many times does someone go here because of accidents, because of sickness. What she is trying to do is build the case for Duke to pay her salary to be with us full time.
That's great. That's great. That's so interesting. Thanks for that feedback.
She's already proven it, but she hasn't. They want to do it, but they just can't decide who's going to pay the bill.
Yeah.
And I know what she makes, and we're not going to pay it. But I'm just saying, but with all the, it's not a day that goes by. If it is, I don't remember one that we have not seen an EMS unit at our facility.
Yeah,
At least
that's
one,
what it
if
sounds.
not 2-3 times a day.
Yeah.
And they're going straight to the emergency department. A lot of these things can be stopped
Right.
by just taking them to the urgent care, would save so much money.
Right.
So she's already shown that she can pay her salary, but she just got to get you to approve it.
Yeah. Thank you for that. That's fascinating. I'd be curious to see how that turns out for you guys, because I can't imagine you all are very different from everybody else. So it'll be really interesting to find out. More slip and fall stuff. Ladders. Ladders are the bane of my existence and insurance agents in existence. Make sure the ladders are safe. Make sure you have someone spotting them. Make sure, I've had people change light bulbs, get electrocuted, and fall off. And you can obviously imagine how expensive that is. So just be really careful on ladders. Do not take them. Do not underestimate how much damage they can do. So mopping floors, using caution signs, clearing stairways. Stairways are really tough as well. So it's always, it's easy to, everyone, I remember when I was first thinking about slip and falls, like, how do you prevent slip and falls? Well, you just don't slip and fall, right? That just seems like easy, straightforward. But it's something where you really just have to mind, audit your policy, audit the flow of traffic. Where can we build a handrail? Where can we paint a sidewalk yellow? Where can we, navigate things? And where is an uneven portion on our sidewalk? How can we navigate these things as much as possible? Just trying to audit your flow of traffic as much as possible. So, all right. So this is sort of during operations. The planning for inclement weather. I think I'd really want to stress that on this page. That's just so important. Just because when it snows, maybe you don't get a lot of snow down here, but maybe up north when you get to Jersey. In Jersey, you might see that. But heavy rains and things of that nature can be really something you want to plan for. Obviously, incident reporting sheets. Something happens, you want to document. So obviously, why do you laugh?
Because he gets all in.
You get all
And it can be,
extensive.
I don't know what's so comical about that response.
well, you can read, Gary sees it too, you can read some of this, it's like, I scratched my hand.
Okay.
And you just realize, you gotta be kidding me. You just sign it and file it in the book and keep moving on.
Good.
But that's good that.
Yeah,
that's
Yeah,
awesome.
so I had the opposite problem of they weren't documenting everything when it started, and now people are documenting, I scratched my head, and that's better than not having.
Yeah. It is comical.
Well,
though.
you can't read half of it. The writing's the bad part, so I'm like, yeah, I don't even. know
All
what to
right,
say.
well, that's interesting
We just
feedback.
had an issue where someone came and asked us for some, just asked me for some compensation last week for something that happened 9 months ago, and I didn't know they got hurt.
Yeah.
I mean,
Was it a volunteer?
Last summer.
Was it a volunteer?
kind of, sort of.
Okay, all right.
It's a client which we consider a volunteer.
But no, it's volunteer. Yeah.
And so it's, I mean, when they don't tell you, but then all of a sudden, he saw it, he saw it happen, I mean, you know, it's, I mean, I haven't done anything yet, but up to that point. I mean, I'm just saying, people are trying to get money in any way they
For
can.
sure. For sure. Yeah, and
There's
then,
big money in it, that's
Oh, yeah.
the issue. you
Yeah.
know?
I can go back to a case where I had one man that collected 6 times on his back, and it's nowhere in his file. Matter of fact, he got paid off by TROSA $25,000 before he came to our location, and all of a sudden he was there about like 3 or 4 weeks and he hurt his back. He
Mm.
had to pay it, because people pay things out.
interesting. Good feedback.
So as part of background checks, we are allowed to, with the waiver, look for histories like that.
Hmm.
We don't do it, but
I got 500 people there, all close to it.
Yeah. It is a
By the time I
lot.
run all those background checks, I can pay off a lot of claims.
Yeah.
500, wow.
I
Yeah.
think we had 2,200 unique people last year.
Wow.
Mm.
So we're working towards the post-accident. So this is something that will actually make a huge difference. Is return to work, transitional duties, and this is, you know, if someone's out of work for over a month, it can result in over 100,000 overall losses, including the cost, the training, you have to hire someone new to replace them, all those sorts of things. And so if there's any sort of way you can get them back to work in any sort of capacity, it keeps the morale higher, it reduces the workers' comp costs and things of that nature. So trying to find ways to reintegrate them, maybe they can do a desk job, maybe they can transition into something a little less strenuous. But the transitional duties would be a really good plan to, if someone does get hurt and can't do as much. Just trying to get them back to work as soon as possible. All right, and then the claims analysis. This is something that, I mean, obviously you have, when you have thousands of people on your campuses and per year and you're working with so much, I really think analyzing your claims on a regular basis, breaking it down in an Excel spreadsheet, and if you're not doing it, your agent should be able to do something for you on that. Looking at, you know, what type of claim is it? What happened in this situation? You know, the claim. The thing I ask people on a regular basis: what are you doing to prevent the claim from happening again? That's like the number one question I ask people after they had a claim. What are you doing to prevent it from happening again? Because the last thing the insurance company wants to see is, oh, they had this claim. Oh, they had it again and again and again. It's like, well, then they look at repetition and they see it as an issue, and then and it becomes a larger issue when it comes to claims and premiums. So just looking at your claims, you could probably do it, honestly, on a quarterly basis. I think that'd probably be wise. Seeing if there's any open claims that have been happening, can you close them out? Where is it at in the process? Sometimes those things take a while. I had one claim where a thing called subrogation, they're trying to subrogate against the other company, and it's taken 4 years. Some of these things just take a while. So, but staying on top of these, because if your claims are open, and companies sometimes forget about which ones are open, which ones are closed, and then they still go against you when it comes to, you know, costs and things of that nature. So staying on top of your claims, seeing what you can do to prevent them.
You mentioned repeated claims. I presume you're talking about the same kind of incident. We have a repeated individual who makes workers' comp claims. Is there
Yeah.
any way you recommend to look at that?
Yeah, I mean, that would be, I mean, honestly, if they start having, if it's the same person over and over again, maybe change them to different duties. I don't,
It's a tough situation.
It is a tough, because you don't want to let them go, because then they'll probably result in a lawsuit.
Well, and change of duties you even have to be careful about, because if you put them in an area that they're not happy with, then they can come back and say, well, you put me somewhere like that because.
Yeah.
It's not a situation where we can do any kind of change of duty.
Yeah, that's a really good question. That's honestly something that I would probably go back and I'd ask some other people some ways to approach it. Yeah, I mean,
Legally, it's really tricky.
yeah, very tricky.
Do you have a giant inflatable bubble, or?
No, there.
You said one there.
Usually there is a HR hotline service that's offered by a lot of companies. That's sometimes an option as well. So, but yeah, probably talking to as many people as possible, just picking brain on those ones. But that's a really tough situation. So the rest is just some information about us, and then the back is just some basic catastrophic claims that we see with driving, maybe some tips to mitigate it. Some claims when it comes to warehouse safety, slip and falls. Just going back to, what can we do to prevent things from happening? What's the common claim? What's the most catastrophic claim that we face? And if you have any sort of exposure, like, Joel, we do this exposure. Do you have any information about top, ways to be safe on that? Feel free to reach out to us. We'll be able to kind of figure out, like, this would be if you have someone escalating situation, how do you step in? If there's a fight, altercation, do you step in? How do you approach it? Because honestly, the expertise I'm seeing is don't step in. But it does get messy. So that's a guy. Obviously, swivel chairs. We don't like swivel chairs from an insurance standpoint. So make sure the chairs are safe. So, but that's all I have. Does anyone else have any further questions for us?